but we're going through our top 10 college football rankings. Alan, I'm going to start us off with number one. I really think I looked at this and I almost put Clemson up at number one. I really did, but I decided to put LSU as number one because of their resume and the fact that they won that big, huge away game in Tuscaloosa, which, we called.
So I just want to make this clear. We are giving our top 10, not what we necessarily think the pollsters are going to rate them, right?
Yeah, we're not talking about like what's going to happen tomorrow night because you never know, but this is really us.
Okay. Yeah, I think ours mine is definitely going to be different than theirs. I'm pretty sure, but yes, I actually have LSU as number one as well. I mean, you can't leave LSU out of number one. They have the most impressive resume. They have the most impressive wins, especially after Tuscaloosa this weekend for sure. So we agree there on number one.
LSU, to me, a top 5 offense. They can hang with anybody. My only concern is that they're giving up points with anybody too. They're really kind of like just a little bit better than Alabama. I don't know if they can really stop stop a good offense, and I think if you can hang with them, I think you've got a really good chance at beating them. I wonder what's going to happen when they meet a good defense. Now, they did meet a good defense, I believe, in Florida, but that was a home game, so I give them a little credit for the home game there. And Florida hung with them until kind of the third end of the third, fourth quarter. For me, number two, I know this is going to be surprising. People are going to go back to the old ranking we did a couple of weeks ago and say, well, how did they jump so much? But really, Al, the more I look at it, I'm going to tell you that I have cemented my confidence again in Clemson. They don't have the resume, but they're a top 5 offense, a top 5 defense, and they've played, even though they haven't played ranked teams, they've played top level offenses and shut them down. So I'm going with Clemson number 2.
Look, I don't have a problem with Clemson number 2. As a matter of fact, if we're going, I try to base mine less off the eye test, because when they do that on the big shows like ESPN, it's artificially inflated, with all the propaganda from the SEC out there. So right now I'm going based on resume, and I've got Ohio State number 2. They've played some lower level teams. They do have a good win, convincing win against Wisconsin, a pretty good team there. But they've just absolutely blown everybody out. So they've done a good job. I'm having them at number 2 right now.
Okay. For me, I like Ohio State, and I'm split between them and Clemson. I don't give them credit for having a ranked win against Michigan State because I really think Michigan State is one of those teams just can't win big games.
Yeah.
Same goes for Wisconsin. They as the year has gone on, Wisconsin has turned into a team that basically is so one-dimensional that they hang on their defense, but then now they can't win games. So I feel like Wisconsin's kind of fallen off the planet. They're even out of the Heisman race. We know Joe Burrow is now obviously the Heisman winner. We can go ahead and say that after winning that game. I think I think most people are going to give that to him. So LSU has their first Heisman winner in a lot of years, I think. And I'm going to go ahead and call that. But I got Ohio State, again, a top 5 offense and really the number 1 defense as far as total defense goes. They've played offense. Really, they're the only team, Al, as far as defense goes, that has only one team has scored 20 or more. Same thing with Clemson. Only one team has scored 20 or more, and Ohio State's the same. So I think those are 2 stacked teams. To be honest with you, I think when it's all said and done, you're going to see a Clemson Tiger, Ohio State Buckeye national championship.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised with that at all. I have Clemson at number 3, actually. After being kind of punished for their close win at UNC, they kind of took their rightful spot inside the top 4, and, they're not going to relinquish that unless they were to lose one from here on out. And I mean, there's nobody they're not going to be heavily favored against. So I have Clemson at number 3. I definitely think they can make, you can make an argument at the end of the day, for having them at number 1 if you want to use the eye test or something like that. But I think simply based on resume, number 3 is a good spot for them.
Now, I know this is one that I don't really want to say because it is another team from that conference. But the only team they lost to is LSU. Now, granted, I do not like the fact that they did not have the lead at all at home the entire game. They were down by 20. It was almost a repeat of the national championship Saturday. And then they finally started running the ball more and getting back into it. Their defense kind of stepped up towards the end of the game, and they brought it within 1 score. But I've got Alabama. They're still by far the best offense this side of Oklahoma that's left outside of LSU, Clemson, Ohio State. Alabama's a top 10 offense, not a top 25 defense by any means. Anybody can score on them. But they do have the offense to hang with, I think, just about anybody. And when you look at the rest of the 10 that we're going to list, being that Oklahoma has now decided that they're not going to hold anybody back, they're going to let everybody score 40 on them. I think that the only good offense left is Alabama, so I'm giving Alabama my number 4 slot.
And this is where I knew we were going to start to differ here, and it's kind of funny because I know you'll probably be more in line with the BCS poll that comes out. But actually, I went with Oregon at number 4. They're still looking good. A team that continues to roll despite their opening week loss to Auburn in a game that they really outplayed Auburn the entire game. I really think they're going to continue to run the table. I thought they would lose that game and run the table to get a possible spot in the playoffs. And it looks to me right now that they're headed for, a one-loss Utah team in the Pac-12 championship, assuming they continue to win, of course. So right now, I have Oregon at number 4.
I kind of figured you were going to lean towards an Oregon. You've been kind of talking about them all season, saying don't sleep on them. Don't say that they don't count them out after that one loss to Auburn, even though they had it in the bag and they kind of they just didn't want to adjust. That was my frustration there. I have them a little bit lower because I ding them for not adjusting in that game. If they would have just turned it around and started stopping the run, which they really couldn't against, I believe, Whitlock. He basically ran all over him and then allowed Bo Nix to go off a play action and throw a prayer up. Yeah. But that's my top 4. That's Alan's top 4. Let us know what you think. Are we way off base? Is there somebody that you would have that we don't have? I'm seeing Minnesota. I'm going to get to Minnesota. I'll tell you that. I think that unjustly they're not being jumped up. I think that they're a better team than 17th. That's for sure. I think they're definitely a top 10 team. But there's some problems with Minnesota too. So for me, my 5th one is going to be one that's not Oregon. I really do think that Utah, with that stout defense that they have, is going to, they don't play Oregon until the championship game, presumably. I'm going to say Utah goes and beats Oregon in that Pac-12 championship game. So I'm giving them my number 5.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with that. I have Utah a little bit lower than that. I have actually Minnesota at number 5. Okay, I know that's a lot higher than a lot of people would have them, but at the end of the day, they haven't lost a game. Minnesota is undefeated. The committee showed them no love when they ranked them 17th. And then the alleged number 4 team, they actually had beat pretty well there. They had a little comeback at the end of the game, but Minnesota was scoring like crazy in that game. They did a really good job in that game. And they actually showed some pretty good defense until, like I said, near the end of the game where they decided to come back a little bit and Penn State made it real close there. But I like what I've seen from Minnesota. They have no choice but to make a huge jump in the polls here if they thought Penn State was number 4 and Minnesota beat them. It's actually a game I picked as Minnesota covering the spread there with a possible win. I don't know if you picked that or not, but yeah, it's looking good for the Golden Gophers right now, so I'm going to have them at number 5.
I ended up going with Minnesota for my Yahoo Pick'em, and we'll talk about what our rankings are right now. We'll go over that a little bit further in our second segment. Stay tuned for our second segment, Picks Against the Spread, Week 12. Alan and I'm 58%. Alan's still at that 61%, but I'm getting closer to him. Beat him by, I think, 3 games this weekend, so we'll take a look at that next segment. But continuing with this, after Utah, I really didn't want to put this team either because I think this team is going to get a lot of credit because of their conference that they're in, but really hadn't shown me anything other than beating Florida on a neutral field. And I don't even know if they're going to win this weekend against Auburn, but I have to say that, well, we'll talk about it more when I get into it. But Georgia, as of right now, I got them at 6, and I'll tell you right now, it's because of their defense. It's because of their run defense that keeps them in games. Their offense is not explosive at all. So I really think there's a huge gap between really Alabama and the Utah Georgias of the world as far as offense goes. It's just, night and day. And then my 7th one is Oregon. So kind of the team you talked about. The only difference is I kind of flipped Oregon and Utah and then threw Georgia in the middle. I felt like a Pac-12 team needed some representation above 3 SEC teams because I think that there's more parity than people like to admit. It's not SEC and everyone else. The Pac-12 has some good teams. The Big Ten has some pretty good teams. Nah, the Big 12, I don't know, but the ACC definitely has teams that nobody wants to give them credit for. Mm-hmm. Man, if they only had 2 losses, they would get a lot of credit. But a lot of the coastal teams have 3 losses or 4 losses, and that gives them less credit. But they're still good teams, and they're difficult teams, and they're high-scoring offenses. But so I give Utah there 5, Georgia 6, Oregon 7. What you got?
I actually have Alabama at number 6. I mean, they don't have any good wins on the season. They have blown a lot of people out, but they don't have any wins over big teams, I guess I should say. And their one loss is a close loss to what I have as the number 1 team in the country, and you have as the number 1 team in the country. So you don't want to ding them too much for that. But it knocks them down a little bit more. I have them down at number 6 because it was a home loss, and that matters to me. But they have the Tua wasn't 100% healthy, excuse in their back pocket. So that'll kind of, I'm sure, keep the committee on their side in the near future. So I still think they're in the conversation, of course, as everybody does. As a matter of fact, they'll probably come out, 4th or 5th in the rankings when they come out tomorrow. But I have Alabama number 6. I have Utah number 7. They have a couple of decent wins, including Washington, this past week on the road, which is a good win. Their only loss was to Southern Cal, at Southern Cal. So they deserve the spot. And assuming they win out along with Oregon, I think the Pac-12 championship winner really should have a space in the Final Four for the college football playoff.
We're kind of along the same lines. The only big difference there is the Georgia-Minnesota. We kind of, you haven't said Georgia yet. I haven't said Minnesota yet. As far as this, let me just stop you right there with this Tua was injured thing. That sucker was running around the field like a jackrabbit the entire game, and then they get one punt, and then they zoom into his ankle. His ankle was not a problem. He scored a ton of points that game, and his defense couldn't keep LSU off the field. So that's nothing to do with his ankle. So don't sit here and tell me that they deserve to still be up there because of his ankle, or if they get a loss, it's okay. I know Alabama.com was saying, we don't even care if they lose a game because we're still going to make it because we're going to say he's injured. And that's a bunch of crap.
It is.
Let me know what you think. Are we off base? We've told you our top 7 so far. We got 3 more to go. I know a lot of people are already saying you can't keep an undefeated Big Ten team out. We're not going to do that. I mean, I think the undefeated Big Ten team is going to be Ohio State.
Yep,
I think you're going to shut down Minnesota. Penn State still has a chance, but I think they're going to shut them down too. But so we're not neglecting the Big Ten. So our last 3, finishing out the top 10, I wanted to put Minnesota higher, but they don't really have statistically the best offense in the world. They have a really good defense. And I don't know. I think you put Baylor's, the Minnesotas, the Penn States of the world, the Oregons of the world, I think you could lump them all together and they'd probably come out 50% in their win-loss record, if they were all in the same conference. I think it's a toss-up, pick one out of the hat type of teams. Mm-hmm. So I've got Baylor 8, Minnesota 9, and Penn State 10, because I think they're just really even.
Sure, yeah, and I actually have Baylor at number 8. They continue to squeak by teams, and they actually should have lost to TCU this past week, and I think they ended up winning in triple overtime, but that's what good teams do. They find a way to win. Baylor's still undefeated, so right now I've got to give them a little bit of love. I have them at number 8. Oklahoma, I have at number 9. I still don't have them as a great team. They lost to a good Kansas State team on the road. I almost made the comeback there. They had what some people are calling a controversial onside kick. I'm saying no way. But, they can help their cause with a win over Baylor and get back in the hunt. They play Baylor this week, and I think they're actually going to there's a good chance they win that game. But we'll get to that later when we kind of get to our spread picks. Number 10, I don't know if you've noticed, I have not mentioned Georgia yet. All right. I have Georgia at number 10. And the reason why, they had the win against Florida, like you said, but they lost to a pathetic South Carolina team that just got beat by App State at home. Okay. Georgia lost at home to this team who may not even make a bowl game. That is unforgivable, and that's why I have them at 10. However, I say that knowing they still control their own destiny getting to the playoff. All they have to do is win the SEC championship game, and they're in. But right now, they deserve to be really no higher than number 10, if you ask me.
But yeah, like I said, Baylor, Minnesota, Penn State, Florida, Oklahoma, Auburn, Michigan, you just throw all those teams in a hat and pick one, and I think they could win any given day at this point. That's it for our first segment of the night. We hope you enjoyed it. We're going to take a quick 30-second break, and we'll be back to talk our Week 12 picks against the spread. So hang tight with us.